As women, we've bought into a story as old as time about our own powerlessness. So we've been taught from a very young age, probably before the womb even, and we know through epigenetics that this is true. Before we were even conceived, energetically, we would know as women that we are rather powerless in the world. So the messaging that we get from before we're even born, in our mother's womb, during gestation, certainly during the early years of our being alive, and thereafter, once it gets normalized past the age of 7, it has already been set, is the perception that we're powerless in the creation of our own lives. And so the best that we've got available to us is either to settle or to navigate whatever reality exists given the strategies and the tools that are already out there. And of course, those are someone else's strategies, someone else's tools, and they're the ones that know best. So all we've got to do is figure out who the correct expert is to listen to and apply their strategies and then get the life that we want while internally we feel powerless. So how do we know to do that? How do we know to look at external voices for information on our own internal states? This is taught. This is something that we learn through the process of cultural conditioning. And nobody is spared this process. Everybody is exposed to cultural conditioning. Otherwise, you wouldn't know how to speak, you wouldn't know how to think, you wouldn't know how to see patterns in any particular way. Like you see what happens. I mean, I guess they've been abused, so that doesn't really quite count, but you can see what happens to people who don't socialize much, who don't engage much. It's like their social muscles atrophy. And this is true for any particular kind of muscle, is like it starts to atrophy if you don't use it. So we learn at a very young age not only what quote unquote is real and true around our own sense of power, and we learn that through modelings, particularly same sex modeling. And I know in the world that, you know, gender is becoming a trivial thing, a barbaric thing of the past. This still holds true, where same sex, same gender modeling is the single most powerful way that we learn about ourselves. So I learned from my mother how to be a woman, and she learned from her mother how to be a woman, who learned from her mother how to be a woman. And intergenerationally, there are a few changes, but those changes don't amount, they're incremental, right? So they don't amount to anything sufficiently large enough to be able to transform anything fundamental, anything that's deeply rooted, that's based on how we feel about safety, right? How we feel safe inside ourselves. And we tend to feel safe inside ourselves when we're replicating the familiar, even when the familiar is, you know, violent and abusive, or shunning and shaming and all that sort of stuff that we're so used to. So we learn at a very young age how to be woman, right? And we learn that through looking at and following what our mother's doing and her mother's doing and the women in our community are doing, because it reinforces one another. It's a fractal way to learn, right? Our existence is fractal. And so as I learn from one person, it's amplifying in the community, it's amplifying in the country, it's amplifying and now in the global sphere. So here's what I've come to discover. My perceptions, as were imposed upon me up until the age of 7, that I continued to replicate thereafter habitually out of my awareness, did not serve me. So they were mindsets that were installed in me as real and true that were simply not. And those mindsets that I discovered are not true for me allowed me to notice the ways in which we replicate the narrative of powerlessness, particularly for women. For everybody, but I work with women, so that's what I'm interested in talking about. So if I perceive myself as powerless, then I may not actually, anything I do, any strategy I try, is not going to work. Guess why? Because it's not how the structure of thought works. That's not how the predictable structure of thought works. Predictable because it's a pattern, because there's a trajectory, because it's a process that follows a particular trajectory. So if you know about the structure of thought and you know how to ask yourself the right kinds of questions that presuppose the answers, what happens is you actually discover a lot more about yourself. And part of what you discover is that your history, your conditioning, your stories are not real, are not true. However, this is also true. It's hard work to look at yourself and all the things that you don't want to look at. And here's the thing, if you don't do that, you're going to continue to live the life you've got, which probably means you're going to replicate a powerlessness mindset, not only for yourself, but also for the future generations. And particularly if you have daughters, this is imperative because we're living in a world where the chaos is not going to stop. That's for sure. It's amplifying. They're sending military on the street to do wellness checks and to give us pamphlets around emergency preparedness and whatever it is that they're doing. And it's like there's a military state that's actually unfolding in front of our very eyes. And if we don't awaken to our own truth, if we don't reclaim our own truth and our own power, what's going to happen is they're going to steal not only our children's minds, but also their bodies. And biodigital convergence is real. This is not a thing that we're talking about. This is a thing that's actually real, that is being they're telling us this is what they're doing, right? Our federal government is telling us this is what they're doing. So if you believe in that, that's great. You do your thing, dive right in, see what happens, be one with a cloud. I'm not talking to the people that want to be one with a cloud. I'm talking to the people who value the sanctity of what it means to be a divine being having a human experience. And if you know yourself as that, then you definitely know that biodigital convergence is not the way to go. It's a control mechanism that's going to necessarily take away your capacity to know your own divinity. So how do you get to know your own divinity? Is you reclaim your perceived limitations. You reclaim that which is yours. And you actually act on it unapologetically. And the way that we do that is through our intuition. Particularly for women, we are fine-tuned to know our own truth, not everybody else's, to know our own truth through the impulses of our body, through our intuition. So what gets in the way is all the blah, 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 the stories, the conditionings, the anchors, the double binds, all the stuff that's historical. What will people think? And am I imposter? And all the things. So whatever your thing is, you're not unique. Whether you're struggling with anxiety, depression, OCD, bipolar, whatever, like IBS, whatever's going on in your body, you are not unique. And the reason those things are manifesting in your body, I know this will be counter, the medical system, but the reason why that's happening in your body is not because you're deficient or because there's something wrong with you biologically. It's because that is a messenger. So it's seeking to get your attention. And if you know how to decode those messages, and we do that through code model coaching, when you know how to decode those messages in your body, you discover how freaking powerful you are because you can reclaim it. You can reclaim it, you can own it, you can take ownership of it. And once you take ownership of that, man, you're unstoppable because then you know. You won't rely on an external voice to tell you how it is. You won't rely on your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your siblings, your husband, whatever it happens to be, the doctors. It's like you know. And once you know, I'm telling you, you are unstoppable. So if you are looking to live the kind of life that allows you to be at the front and center of the whole thing, where you are deeply rooted inside your body, where you know your truth, when you can hear your intuition and you don't confuse it with fear, when you know who you are and what you stand for, and you know how to actually engage that. And it is a process, right? It is a process. It's not a thing that you wake up to and now you know. Just like your habits until now have been a process, this way of living too is a process. I know this way works because I'm living it. So the well system's way of moving through the world works because it's got the process of quantum TLC that you apply. It's got code model coaching and code model decoding the messages of your body and energetically your thoughts and all the interconnections. And it's also got quantum TLC, the process to engage when triggers present in the life choices that you make. Triggering life choices. These are things that are reliable and they're replicable. So anybody can do it. And if you know scientific method, this is it. Because if I can show you how to do it and I know how to do it and I can show you how to do it and you can do it, and then you can show your children how to do it and then they can show their children how to do it and it becomes a way of life, then there's nothing to think about, right? The cultural conditioning disappears, or the habituated cultural conditioning disappears, and what you're left with is a process that allows you to reclaim your own power, reclaim your own divinity, and know yourself as divine. So I'm facilitating a year-long exploration around new ways to navigate chaotic world. And it's all about reclaiming the power of the crone, reclaiming our wholeness as women, discovering what our limitations, perceived limitations are, reclaiming those, owning them so that we evolve through them, and discovering how to become our boundless leader selves. So the selves that lead us into the creation of our meaningful world and our meaningful life. We desperately need this at this point in time, not only for ourselves, but for the future of the future generations, particularly of our children and their children. But I'm thinking of my children and I'm thinking of your children, because the world that they're going to be navigating is going to be utterly chaotic and utterly anti-life. So if you feel the same way, I encourage you to just get in touch with me. Let's have a conversation. It's a commitment-free exploration, and you don't have to do anything about it but have a conversation about it and discover that there's an alternative to how you've been living. How you engage the process, we can explore that together. So if you want to do that, go ahead, send me a message. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Pinterest, stella@sparkingthesacred.com. Just send me an email. That's the best way to do it. But you can find me at sparkingthesacred.com, contact me or whatever that page is, and let's talk. All we're doing is having a conversation, and that is what has the capacity to transform the world. I hope you choose to have a chat with me. I'll talk to you later.